All right. Good morning and welcome to STL History Live, Mighty Mississippi Road Trip. My name is Aaron Pelker. I am a Community Engagement Coordinator with the Missouri History Museum's Public History Department, and I want to thank you for spending part of your Tuesday morning with us. Before we get to today's presentation, I do have a couple of brief remarks. I want to mention that all three Missouri Historical Society locations are open to the public from Wednesday through Sunday. Your safety is a top priority. We would love for you to visit if you feel comfortable doing so. Advanced free tickets are required to visit all our locations, but please visit mohistory.org to plan your visit and reserve your free tickets. Next, I want to mention that today's program is presented in conjunction with the museum's Mighty Mississippi exhibit. That exhibit's only with us for a few more months, and then it's run at the Missouri History Museum on June 6th. So please be sure to reserve your free tickets to see that exhibit before it leaves us. Also, I would like to thank our museum members and the Zoo Museum Tax District for their generous support for both our exhibits and our programming. We wouldn't be able to host programs like this morning's without their contributions. Thank you. Lastly, before I turn it over to our presenter for this morning's program, I do want to explain a few of the features you'll find on Zoom that might be helpful this morning. This will be about a 30-minute presentation with 10 minutes at the end for audience Q&A. You can submit your questions for our speaker through the Q&A feature on your toolbar. We ask that you wait until the end of the presentation before you submit those questions. At the conclusion of the program, we hope you'll complete a short survey that will automatically populate in your internet browser. So we appreciate and look forward to your feedback. With that, I do want to turn it over and introduce our speaker this morning, Bill Cleveland, a longtime friend of the museum. He's a local writer and broadcast veteran of BillOnTheRoad.com. So with that, I'll turn it over to Bill. Thank you and enjoy.
All right. Well, thank you, Aaron. Hello, everyone. Now, I'm going to give you just a little bit of a little disclaimer here as we get started. I am not in St. Louis right now where I normally live, like I assume many of you. I'm actually down in Florida. And I don't say that to be braggadocious. I did actually manage to escape just by a matter of hours, the snowstorm and the ice and all of that. It was treacherous getting down here. I tell you that because I'm in uncontrolled territory right now. I can't control the sounds that are peeking around the corner, and there was a guy vacuuming about 20 minutes ago next door. So I don't know what's going to happen. I'm near an air base, so you might hear a plane fly by. Whatever, we'll make it happen. But I just want to let you know in case you hear some crazy sounds. I'm not incredibly familiar with Zoom, so we're going to try and do this. Hopefully we can get it done right. As I go to share the screen here, let me just tell you a little bit about what I'm going to do. So I'm going to share with you some road trip ideas along the Mississippi River. And so I know they have the great Mississippi River exhibit at the History Museum. This is not necessarily about Mississippi in general, but just highlighting a few towns, a few places, a few quirky attractions that you might want to check out along the Mississippi River. And I'm not going to hit every single town. So you don't need to email me later and go, hey, you missed this one. I know I didn't include all of them, but I included some of my favorites, and again, some of the more quirky stuff and some things that maybe you haven't thought about or have thought about in a while. So with that, we'll get started. I would encourage you to take some notes if you are a road tripper, if you like taking road trips. Because I'm going to give you a few things that it'll just be easier if you write them down than have to worry about finding these later or tracking me down via email or the website. So these are a few apps that I use when I travel, and I would encourage you to write these down and look for them just real quick. iExit is a really great one. I use it a couple of times on the way down here to Florida. You click on it, it's all run obviously through GPS, and it tells you what is up ahead on the highway. So if you're looking for a place to eat, gas, it even tells you, the price of gas at the exits up ahead, and it's very, very handy to have. So that's called iExit. That one is a free app you can use. One is called Just Ahead. I don't use this so much just because I've traveled so much and I write books and I do it, so I don't necessarily need this, but for a lot of people it's a fantastic resource, and it's an audio travel guide. And you click on that, and it'll kind of give you a narration of the area that you're in or what's coming up as you're driving. It's a really fun road trip app to have. And then the last one that I'll throw out, and I use this quite often, it's called Roadside America. And this is not a free app, but I will tell you that it's been, I think in total, I think there are several things you can unlock. And so I think in total it was like maybe $5 or $6 to buy the whole thing. And I use it all the time. Well worth the investment. I know we mostly like free apps, right? But Roadside America, and it'll find really quirky little roadside attractions, things that you might want to see as you're driving and trying to maybe break up a long road trip. So put those down if you are a regular road tripper. So let's start up in St. Paul, Minnesota. Now, obviously, Minneapolis, we include that as well as a Mississippi River town. But St. Paul, that is obviously the capital of Minnesota. And you see me there standing in front of the Capitol in my Where's Waldo t-shirt. Uh, and I love going to state capitals. They're all beautiful. They all have, unique history, and they're free, free to the public. And if you are a people watcher, in particular, for whatever reason, in St. Paul, you can have a good time doing some people watching in the state capitol and in St. Paul. And so I encourage folks to check that out. Now, I mentioned that I like quirky kind of roadside attractions and interesting things. So St. Paul, they have, a handful of attractions. They have a really fun AAA, I think it's a minor league baseball team, really cool stadium if you're into baseball. The one thing that I would suggest, if you are a true road tripper and you like kind of doing things off the beaten path, this is the thing. This is called the Covington Inn. And so when I travel, I'm not afraid to stay in unique places. I have slept in a grain silo. I have slept in a former gas station. I have slept in a train caboose. This was one of the unique ones. So this is it's a tugboat is what it is. And it's right on the Mississippi River, and it's there in St. Paul, the Covington Inn. You can look it up. It's on the I don't know if it's on Airbnb, but it's on one of those sites. You can just Google it and find it, and you can stay the night in a tugboat. And this, obviously, you can see the windows there. These are the windows from my room looking out onto the Mississippi River, and it's just kind of a fun, especially if you're just there for one night and you're passing through and you want to do something kind of unique. Check it out. The lady was really nice that owned it. She lives on the boat. I think there were 4 different rooms. Met some other interesting people while I was there. So Covington Inn, check that out. That's in St. Paul. So we'll move down to Dubuque, Iowa. And there are a handful of great attractions in Dubuque, a couple of really cool museums, some cool restaurants and stuff. But I mentioned that I like quirky things. So this right here, this is called the Finland Place Elevator. And some of you may have done this. It is, they call it the shortest and steepest railroad in the world. And it was built back in 1882. Back when it opened, it cost 5 cents to ride. And so you can get on at the bottom, or you can get on at the top and ride back and forth. And it's not an incredibly long ride, but it's a beautiful view of Dubuque. And if you're going to be there for a couple of days, it's a really great thing to do when you first get there, because you kind of see the layout of the town. And I always, it's always great when you have the chance to get out and just kind of get your bearings. And this is a great way to do that. And again, the ride is, it takes you it's not even 5-minute ride. And there's 2 of the trains going at a time. So they'll pass each other. One's going up and one's going down. But it's 296 feet. They call it I always say this wrong, so I'll make sure to get it right. A funicular. I think I'm not saying that right. But that's in Dubuque, Iowa, and you want to check that out. It's called the 4th Street Elevator, and it's open from April 1st to November 30th. And they open from 8 in the morning until 10 o'clock at night. But back in the day, they used it. It was a useful thing to get people up and down there in Dubuque. All right, so the next one, let's move on down to the Quad Cities region. And I've done a few trips in the Quad Cities. Probably my favorite thing to check out, besides a food item, which I will mention here in just a moment, is the history of John Deere. I've written 2 books where I included John Deere. One's called Finding the American Dream, and one was 100 Things to Do in America Before You Die. And the reason I included John Deere is that, that John Deere was just such a revolutionary person and changed so much within that industry. And what I always found interesting about John Deere, or at least the story, is that he never lived long enough to actually see a John Deere tractor. All right. So think about when you hear John Deere, the first thing you think of, you close your eyes, you think, okay, those iconic green tractors with that yellow and green logo. Well, he never saw that. He never actually saw, what it came to be. And so in the Quad Cities region, you can go to Moline, Illinois. They have the John Deere Pavilion, and you can go in there and you can climb up on these giant machines, which is kind of cool, especially if you're not used to, being around them. So you can go in, you can check out all the machines, and then there's all the John Deere history. So you can go to, I believe, the house where he lived. There's several manufacturing areas where you could go and tour. You could tour the headquarters. You could spend several days if you're really into that sort of thing. And then be sure to go into the gift store, because you will see thousands of John Deere items, from little tiny tractors to, everything you can think of with the John Deere logo on it. If you're a fan of John Deere, you'll want to check that out. So that's in the Quad Cities. I mentioned a food item. So ice cream may not be appealing on a day like today where it's 0 degrees where you are. But if you are going through, I definitely recommend making a stop at a Whitey's ice cream location. And the guy there that I'm standing next to, I interviewed him. That's the guy that founded it. And super, super nice people. Love to support businesses where they have some really great ownership. But the ice cream is fantastic. So Whitey's Ice Cream in the Quad Cities, you'll want to make a note of that. All right, so the next one on our list, let's move down to Quincy, Illinois. If you are in the St. Louis region, you've probably been through Quincy. Maybe you haven't been in a while. I'm going to show you a really quick video. Again, I hope the Wi-Fi holds up and you're able to see it and it sounds okay. I will do occasionally tourism videos for cities. And I did this one with my dad. It's real quick. It's about a minute and a half. And we went through and just did a real quick tour of Quincy. Before I play it, this market that you're looking at, this Winking Market, it's the oldest grocery store in Quincy. And so it's just a real fun place to run in, grab a sandwich. Everything's really affordable. I'll tell you a little bit more about Quincy in just a second, but let's roll this here. This is video with me and my dad. We did a father-son road trip to Quincy.
It's a father-son road trip today. I'm Bill from BillOnTheRoad.com, and we are headed to Quincy, Illinois. Quincy is what you might call an authentic river town. Located along the mighty Mississippi, you can turn back the clock to a simpler time, driving by beautiful homes from the 1800s, or grabbing a bite to eat at Quincy's oldest grocery store. There's history literally at every turn, from well-preserved districts to flashbacks of Lincoln and Douglas. The entire region is full of good people, small town charm, and fun for the entire family. So whether it's drinking, shopping, or sleeping in a tree, Quincy, Illinois is just a road trip away.
Yeah, and I mentioned the treehouse in there, and there's a town called, I believe it's Nauvoo, Illinois, and there's a guy, he started what they call 10 acres tree houses. And so I believe there's 3, there might be 4. And so if, again, back to kind of quirky roadside attraction types of things, if you've never spent the night in a tree, like a real tree house, right? Most of us probably when we were kids, we hoped and prayed our parents would make us a cool, tree house right in the backyard, which probably never happened. But this guy, he's a former military guy. He has a regular job now, but he constructed these tree houses, and they're beautiful, and they all have a separate theme. The one that I featured there at the end of the video, is it's like a nautical theme sort of things, about ships or whatever. But it's very cool. It's called 10 Acre Tree Houses. If you're taking notes as you're watching this and you want to check it out, and really, really nice guy, and cool. You spend the night and you're out, you're amongst the woods and you're out, and it's just really cool tree house. So you want to check that out. So that's near Quincy. All right. So Hannibal, Missouri. If you're a good Missourian, you have no doubt been to Hannibal, obviously along the Mississippi River, with all the great ties to Mark Twain, who obviously had great ties to the Mississippi River, right? What I wanted to mention, though, it's a little bit of a deviation off of this Mississippi road trip tour that we're taking here today. And so I'm taking some liberties here, but I want to tell you about it if you don't know about it. So Hannibal is a starting point for what's known as the Missouri Genius Highway. So I believe it's called the Way of the American Genius. And so if you've never done this trip, this is a must do, especially if you live in Missouri. And so it's Highway 36, and you'll start there in Hannibal, which obviously there's plenty to see and do in Hannibal. You see right there, you see the great picket fence there that became famous in Tom Sawyer. But Hannibal starts this Genius Highway. If you want to start in Hannibal, you'll head towards St. Joseph, Missouri. So you're going to head west, obviously, and you'll come across all of these towns where all of these famous Missourians lived. And when you start to look at the list, it's pretty impressive. So obviously, we mentioned Mark Twain, Samuel Adams. Then you have Walt Disney, right? Walt Disney. I said Samuel Adams. That's a beer. Samuel Clemens. Sorry. Walt Disney. He was in Marceline, Missouri, and the town looks like you're going to Disneyland. You can see where a lot of those influences came in. You can go to Walt Disney's, or I should say, you can go by his childhood home, the train station where he played with his brother as a kid. They've turned it into a really, really neat museum, and I have been to hundreds and hundreds of museums as a travel writer. And so I will tell you that I did not have a lot of hope for the Walt Disney Museum, and it totally exceeded my expectations. It was wonderful, really, really great artifacts, really well done, great tour. So that's in Marceline. And then you'll work your way up the highway headed towards St. Joseph. You'll come through Hamilton, Missouri. Hamilton is where J.C. Penney lived. So you can go through and you can see his childhood home and see the J.C. Penney Museum. And then if you're a quilting fan, they have all this great quilting stuff there in Hamilton. And you work your way along, and there's just all of these things. And so one of them is the home of sliced bread. That would be Chillicothe, Missouri. And actually, I have a picture of it right there. So that is the first bread slicer. And if you can believe it, back in the day, the guy that came up with this, he would pitch this idea, hey, let's slice bread. Who wants sliced bread? Nobody wants their bread sliced ahead of time, right? So now, of course, everyone's bread is sliced ahead of time. But that is it. That is the machine. It's on loan from the Smithsonian. It's permanently there, though, at the this little museum there in Chillicothe. And that was the machine that they first used to slice bread. So that's in Chillicothe. And then the next one is in St. Joseph. There are a handful of things to see in St. Joseph. I love this. This is the Walter Cronkite Memorial. Again, all part of this Highway 36. It starts in Hannibal. You can go and you see me there with my Walter Cronkite looking glasses. They're behind a makeshift desk, but it's also designed to look just like the studio that Walter Cronkite used for the CBS Evening News all those years. They have his desk on display. They've got all of his awards and interactive stuff. It's a fantastic museum and memorial in St. Joseph. And then the main thing, as far as the Genius Highway goes, it's the headquarters of the Pony Express. And so the Pony Express started or ended, depending on what route you were taking, in St. Joseph. And so that is worth checking out. So I mentioned that, again, it's not obviously part of the Mississippi, but I know a lot of people, for whatever reason, have never heard of this highway or they've never done the trip. And I thought you'd enjoy learning a little bit about it. So make sure you plan for that. It's you can do it well, I would say, in about 2 days, maybe 2.5 days. So a fun weekend or extended weekend trip. All right, the next one is Chester, Illinois. So I'll just give you a quick backstory. I was invited to go to Chester to do a book signing 4 years ago, maybe. And I had you know, I'd heard, okay, it's got some ties to Popeye. All right, whatever. And I didn't put much stock in it. And when I went, to this little tiny library, and I believe the entire town showed up for my book signing. These were the nicest people, and so then I fell in love with Chester, and again, these are just fantastic people that live there, and then of course did some exploring, met some people, and so I definitely wanted to mention Chester, Illinois, as the home of Popeye. I have another video that I'm going to show. Again, hopefully it shows okay, and hopefully the sound is all right. Um, but it's just a little background on a museum that they have there, and it is the Popeye Museum. And there's a couple that they opened up this museum, and they love Popeye. They don't want to see the legacy of Popeye disappear because, you know, how many kids do you know now that are talking about Popeye, right? Not many. So let's just play this, and again, hopefully it'll run okay.
Debbie Brooks of Chester, Illinois, is afraid her favorite cartoon character, Popeye, could disappear one day.
The younger kids have no clue who Popeye is nowadays.
So in 1994, she moved here along with her husband Mike to help save the tough talking, spinach eating American comic strip icon.
People of Chester said we were crazy, we'd never survive in this town.
Popeye's creator, Elsie Siegler, was born and raised in Chester, Illinois.
But, you know, he left after his 21st birthday. He never came back to Chester. He had leukemia as a kid. Parents grew the spinach thinking it had the healing powers.
Today, the Chester Opera House, where Siegler worked in 1906, is headquarters for the Popeye Fan Club and Debbie's business, Spinach Can Collectibles.
We still have another 5,000 plus pieces still boxed up for the museum. We just don't have room.
Their museum, store, and efforts to put Chester on the map for its ties to the character have paid off. These days, the town now proudly boasts its Popeye heritage just about everywhere, including more than a dozen statues on the Popeye character trail, where visitors are encouraged to pose for pictures and share online in hopes of keeping Popeye's legacy alive and bringing new visitors to Chester, Illinois.
Now the police officers wear Popeye on their uniforms. Fire department has him on their fire truck. You know, we have all these signs, statues, you know, murals. It's good for the town, you know, to keep Popeye going. So it's been a lot of fun. You know, I love coming to work.
Yeah, and they are the nicest people. And when you go into her museum, the museum, the building used to be the theater where the creator of Popeye worked as a kid. He ran the films upstairs, and again, what was used to be a theater. So check that out, Chester, Illinois. It's maybe an hour from St. Louis. I think it's a little under an hour drive from St. Louis. All right, the next one. I'm sure most of you have been to this place. This is obviously Memphis, Tennessee, and that is Graceland, the home of Elvis Presley, former home of Elvis Presley. I will just mention a couple of things. So I know a lot of you have, you know, you went there at one time and it was like kind of a one-time deal. Okay, it's off the bucket list. You don't need to go back. What I'll tell you is that they have done a lot of remodeling, not in Graceland necessarily, but across the street, they have built this massive complex, and it's all dedicated to Elvis Presley. So if you're an Elvis fan, or you're just a fan of music in general, or really American history, you can go there and you could spend several days going through. I mean, it is, I can't overemphasize the fact that it is just massive. Okay. And there are just buildings and buildings and buildings. You know, one's got all of the cars in it, and again, this just reopened in the last few years. So if you're thinking you've been there already, you haven't. It's brand new. It looks amazing. They took a lot of stuff that used to be on display on the Graceland property and put it in its own area on this museum. I have a couple of slides to show you. So yeah, so this is one of Elvis's cars. So they have really, it's an entire building of nothing but his cars, or cars that were gifted to him. And it's really well done. And so even things like, so there's the television, right? So that's the famous television that Elvis shot. I can't remember the story why he shot it, but didn't like what was on television, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, so they have that. And there's one area really where it's just nothing but odds and ends. And this would be an odd and end for sure. And so it is really, really neat. And then they have updated so if you've ever been to where Graceland is, it's, you know, it's not exactly the best part of town. It's not exactly the best, but they've built this brand new complex where you can stay, and it's all gated in. It's a Graceland hotel essentially, and so you can stay there. There's a shuttle that'll take you right to Elvis's house, the Graceland itself, to this museum and everything. So definitely check that out if you haven't been in a while, and if you've never been, it is worth visiting at least once, going to Graceland. And so that's in Memphis. Off the beaten path a little bit. Oh, let's talk about this. Almost forgot. So this is also in Memphis. This is the National Civil Rights Museum. And so the Lorraine Motel, that's where Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. He was standing on the balcony when he was shot. And when you go through this museum, and it is massive. It is. I mean, I went on a road trip heading back to St. Louis, and I just assumed that I would be there, you know, 45 minutes or now. I mean, it was hours. And I didn't see everything. It was huge. But for me, the best part of this museum is that they have preserved this motel. And the museum was basically built into the hotel. You can see me standing there in front of the hotel there in front of a couple of vehicles. And what you can do is, and it's a goosebump sort of moment, you walk in and you'll tour the motel, and they have the room that Martin Luther King Jr. was using that night that he was assassinated, and they've glassed it off. I mean, everything is, you know, nothing's been touched. It's all preserved, and you can walk right to it. And then, and it's a little creepy, but it's, you know, it's history. You look right out the window and you see that balcony where he was standing at that time. So, it's worth a visit, and that's in Memphis as well. That's the Lorraine Motel and the National Civil Rights Museum. Definitely worth a visit. Now, kind of off the beaten path a little bit. So we're a little off the Mississippi River, but again, since you're in the area, you might as well go and check this out. So this is the childhood home, the boyhood home, as they call it, of Johnny Cash. And I'll just give you a real quick backstory here. So I was invited to attend what was called the Johnny Cash Music Festival. I think six years ago. It might be longer now. And essentially what they were doing, they were raising money to restore this house because it had fallen into disrepair. And people would drive by and they would look and they would say, oh my gosh, Johnny Cash, he lived in this, you know, dump of a house. Oh, how sad, or whatever. But he didn't live in a dump in a house. When he got the house, when the family got the house, the Cash family, it was brand new, right after the New Deal. And so he, you know, they got this the home, and they got some land to work. And so it's about 7 miles off the interstate, off of Highway 55. You'll find it there in the little colony of Dyess, Arkansas. And you'll learn all about the colony, and you'll learn about Johnny Cash. And you can go in and you can tour the home. And I love Johnny Cash. You know, I've always been a fan of his music and his life. And so it's a cool thing to see. Again, it's about I think it's 7 miles right off of the highway. It's not far at all. And it's totally worth seeing. And you can go in, you can see where, you know, his bedroom was, you can take pictures in there. It's a really cool treat to go and see where he started his life. And so I mentioned I've written a few books. My most recent book is called Finding the American Dream. And I started writing that book after visiting this house. This was sort of my inspiration, because I realized that, you know, here's a guy that, you know, grew up in obviously tough times and lived out here in the middle of nowhere and ended up becoming this huge superstar, this huge success. And so it was inspiring to me to write this book. So hopefully you'll visit it and you'll be inspired as well. All right, so the last thing that I'm going to mention on the road trip list here is Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And I know people are going to Louisiana. New Orleans is always the draw, right? So that's what most people, when they think of Louisiana, it's always New Orleans. I went to Baton Rouge as just a travel writer. I think I had gone to New Orleans, or I was on my way, and I just thought, what the heck? I'm en route. I might as well visit. And I'll be honest, I like Baton Rouge more than I like New Orleans. If we're picking favorites here, right? I love the old state capitol, which is there. It's beautiful, beautiful building. People are really nice, great food, a lot of things to see and do. love Baton Rouge. Now, I mentioned earlier about state capital. So this is the state capital of Louisiana. It is the tallest Capitol building in the United States. You can take an elevator all the way to the top. They have a really cool observation deck where you can go all the way around. You're standing outside on the ledge, and you'll see it. See all of obviously you'll see the Mississippi River. You'll see all of Baton Rouge. Great vantage point. Get some good pictures up there. A couple of things that you're going to want to look for when you go in and you tour the state capital of Louisiana. The first one is there are, well, I think there's just one now. There's a bullet hole in the wall when you walk in, and they'll tell you where it is if you ask for it, but there's a bullet hole still in the wall from an assassination attempt on Huey Long, which was he was the governor at the time, a governor, I should say, in Louisiana, and it's still in the wall from when they try to take him out. And so that's just kind of an interesting little quirky thing to look for. The other thing is when you go into, I can never remember if it is the state Senate side or if it's the state House of Representatives side, but when you go in, you go to the left, whatever that chamber is there, and if you walk in and you look up, you will see a pencil. And there is a pencil sticking into the ceiling up above. And I don't know if they talk about this on tours. They probably do. But what happened was back in, I think it was in the 70s, maybe early 70s, there was a bombing at the state, this state capitol has seen some action. And so there was a bombing. Well, the explosion rattled everything, as you might imagine, and sent a pencil from one of the representatives or senators' desks and sent it straight up into the air, and it's in the ceiling, and they've never taken it down all these years. So a little bit of history. So when you walk in and you look up, you'll see a pencil that is still in the ceiling, and that is from this crazy bombing that happened way back in the day there in Baton Rouge. But I love Baton Rouge. It's a fantastic town. I'll mention just a couple of other quick things just before we go here, and some of you may have some questions, and I'm happy to answer them or pretend that I have an answer. This is I love just telling real quick cool stories. So we're talking about Baton Rouge. So some of you have been to, I'm sure, this chicken place called Raising Cane's. You may love it, you may hate it, I don't know. And so it started in Baton Rouge. So the original location is there in Baton Rouge. So a Louisiana State University student started this company. And what's hilarious is that when he was in college, this idea of having chicken fingers and a piece of toast and like some sweet tea and coleslaw, that was a project that he had as a business student. So he put it all together. He gave it to his teacher as I believe it was a final exam type of thing, and he got an F. He failed. They said, "This is stupid. What are you doing? It's like you're wasting your time, and this is not it'll never work." Well, he got the last laugh because I feel like a new location of this place opens every 10 minutes all over the country, and now he's obviously a multi-millionaire. But when you pass by the next time you pass by a Raising Cane's, just remember that it was a failing grade for the guy that founded it at LSU. All right, before I go and we do some questions, I'll just mention that I do have some travel books for those of you that do love road trips. One's called Driving Across America. We've got a kid's book out, but the two that you might like for road trip planning: 100 Things to Do in America Before You Die. Maybe you've heard of that. It's been around for a few years. And Finding the American Dream is my latest book, and it's all about taking road trips, but going back to places like I mentioned, Johnny Cash, where you can see his childhood home, but seeing where these people started their dreams. So if you want to check those out, if you like road trips and you're looking to do some planning, you can go to BillOnTheRoad.com. That's my website. And for those of you that are tuning in today, just throw this little bonus at you, so you don't have to pay for shipping. Happy to do that for you. You just put Mo History in as a code when you check out, and I'll take care of the shipping for you, so you don't have to worry about that. But check that out if you will. So let's see, go back. So yeah, that's it. BillOnTheRoad.com is the website. You can check it out. All sorts of great road trip ideas, stories about sightseeing and all that sort of stuff. And happy to answer any questions you have now, or if you have them later, feel free to send an email. And let me make sure, let's see how we do stop share. Hopefully I don't disconnect myself here.
Mhm.
Do you
Thanks,
have me?
Bill.
Do you see me? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think that was really good. So far, we don't have any questions, so I want
Okay.
to ask folks to, if you have any questions, to use that Q&A button on your Zoom toolbar to submit those. We do have one comment, though, if you want to respond to this, Bill.
Sure.
One of our audience members says, John J. Pershing Boyhood Home, also off Highway 36 near Laclede, Missouri.
And the world's largest goose, I believe. If you're interested in that, I think her name is Maxie or Maxine. I can't remember, but that's another. There's a lot of stuff along that Highway 36 to check out. It's a cool road trip. Everyone who lives in Missouri should do it at least once.
All right, we got that one. As you know, we can leave this open for a little bit if folks have
Sure.
questions. Bill, do you have anything you're working on now, or any upcoming trips you want to tell people about to look out for?
Well, I mentioned, and again, I'm afraid to say this because I know many of you are suffering through the horrible weather, but I am along Florida's beautiful Emerald Coast right now. I can actually see the waves crashing into the beach. That's not a joke. As I'm looking out the window here. But so I'll be going to Gulf County, Florida in a couple of days. I've never been over there, so I'm going to check that out, do a couple of videos. And then taking a really long road trip actually this spring, looking forward to. So we're doing some Route 66 stuff, which I know History Museum folks will enjoy. Back to California, where I used to live many years ago. So do that, and then up through Idaho and Utah. So I'm going to be seeing a lot of great stuff this spring, and trying to celebrate a return to travel. Hopefully for many folks, and hopefully late in the spring and certainly in the summer, which I know people are getting antsy and ready to roll. So.
And then there was another comment, not so much a question, but a really neat comment from one of our audience members today. She said the architect for the John Deere headquarters was Eero Saarinen, the Arches designer. So
how about that?
A neat local connection there. So thank you for that, Nancy. That's very awesome.
And obviously I left St. Louis off of our road trip, spot, but I sort of figured you probably know St. Louis in and out. So, but yeah, if you're not from St. Louis, obviously you could stop along here on your Mississippi road trip. And the Great River Road's another one that I didn't include. I just assume most people kind of know. Always a good time to drive up and down the Great River Road, right across from downtown and in any direction. It's beautiful. But yeah, so hopefully folks got a few ideas and again, I love kind of the quirky stuff, so whether it's staying in that tugboat in St. Paul, or riding the old the steep elevator there in Dubuque, or I'm all about experiences, and so those are fun experiences to have and great conversation pieces. So.
Well, I think that's it for the questions so far, but I do want to thank Bill for his time today and that fascinating look at a mighty Mississippi road trip. And I want to thank everyone else for tuning in today, and want to remind you that we do have our regularly scheduled STL History Live programs at Tuesdays at 11 a.m. and Thursdays at 6:30 p.m. as well as our Soldiers Memorial Challenge chats on select Wednesdays at noon. So you can see a couple of the upcoming programs on this slide, and you can find links for all our upcoming programs at mohistory.org or on the Missouri History Museum's Facebook page. So please be sure to check out that lineup. And also, I do want to remind you, if you don't mind, filling out those surveys and let us know what you thought about our program today. So thanks again to Bill, and thanks again for all of you for joining us this cold and chilly Tuesday here in St. Louis. So I hope we'll see you next time. Have a good day, everyone, and see you later.